I found my wife's secret journal. I wish I hadn't opened it. There are things in a marriage you assume are still yours, even when they aren't. A look, a habit, a silence you think you understand. And then one day, without warning, you find something small, something ordinary, and it rearranges the whole room inside your head. That's what happened to me. I didn't catch my wife cheating, that I didn't hear a phone call, that I didn't walk in on some dramatic moment that made everything instantly clear. It was quieter than that. Much quieter. I found a notebook. A cheap black notebook with bent corners and a coffee stain on the back. And by the time I put it down, I realized I had not been living in the same marriage my wife had. The worst part? The first page I opened to wasn't even the worst thing she wrote. It was just the first honest thing. And once you read one honest sentence from someone who's been lying to your face with their silence, you start to wonder how long you've been standing in the wrong story. I'm 42. I live outside Indianapolis, that I manage a warehouse for a regional hardware supplier. Nothing glamorous, nothing tragic either. Just work, early mornings, steel shelves, forklift beeps, 100 tiny problems every day that somehow become your entire personality by the time you get home. My wife, Claire, teaches 3rd grade. We've been married for 14 years. We have one daughter, Nora. She's 11. Smart kid. Quiet in the way observant kids usually are. From the outside, our life looked decent. Not perfect, just decent. The kind of marriage people describe with words like stable. We had a brick house with a narrow porch. We had 2 cars, one of them always needing something. We had a kitchen with scuffed floors and too many school papers on the counter. There were no grand passions in our life. No big vacations. Dramatic fights in restaurant parking lots. Social media love story. Just habits. Shared bills, shared parenting, shared routines. For a long time, I thought that meant we were solid. I used to believe the absence of chaos meant the presence of love. That if no one was screaming, no one was leaving. That if the mortgage got paid and the kid got to school on time and dinner still happened 4 nights a week, then the marriage was doing fine. That's the kind of lie a man can live inside for years. Because practical love feels responsible, and responsibility can look a lot like devotion when no one is asking harder questions. Claire and I used to talk more. Not about anything dramatic, just regular things. The weird kid in her class who kept barking like a dog during math at a guy at my warehouse who backed a pallet jack through a display and blamed bad floor energy. What color we should paint the guest room we never had guests for. Normal life. Then, somewhere over the last year, maybe longer, the conversations got thinner. Nothing snapped. That's what made it dangerous. When something breaks loudly, you deal with it. When it fades quietly, you adapt. At first, it was little things. She'd say, "I'm tired," and go to bed early. I'd stay downstairs pretending to watch a game I wasn't really watching. I'd ask how her day was and get long. She'd ask how mine was, and I'd say, "Same as always." Those answers are marriage killers, by the way. Not because they're cruel, because they shut every door gently enough that nobody notices the house has gone dark. Claire became harder to read. Not cold, not openly distant, just unavailable in a way that didn't leave evidence. She still packed Nora's lunch, still graded papers at the dining table, still remembered birthdays, still bought my father a Christmas gift every year, even though the man never once remembered hers. She was still there. That was the problem. If she had become obviously miserable, maybe I would have confronted it sooner. But she kept functioning. And functioning is easy to mistake for feeling. I started noticing odd things around the edges. She'd smile at her phone, then set it down when I walked in. Not guiltily, almost automatically. She began taking longer walks after dinner, said she needed air. Sometimes I'd offer to come with her, and she'd answer too quickly. "No, it's okay. I just need to clear my head." At first, I respected that. A person's allowed private air, that a person's allowed an inner life. But marriage has a way of sharpening your instincts, even while you're actively trying not to use them. You start sensing when privacy isn't space anymore. It's distance. Nora noticed things before I did, or maybe she noticed them at the same time and was just less skilled at lying to herself. One night, Claire was upstairs showering, and I was helping Nora with science homework at the kitchen table. She was making a model of the solar system out of foam balls and complaining that Jupiter looked too cheerful. Out of nowhere, she asked, "Are you and Mom mad at each other?" I looked up too fast. "No." "Why?" She shrugged, eyes still on the project. "You guys sound polite." That was it. Not angry, not sad, just polite. I remember actually laughing once, but it died fast. Because she was right. Polite is what strangers are. Polite is what divorced people try to be in front of their kids. Polite is what customer service reps are when they already hate you. Polite is not what a healthy marriage sounds like after 14 years. I told her we were just tired. That word again. Tired. Adults use that word the way people throw sheets over broken furniture. Tired means, don't look too closely. Tired means, I am not ready to explain the real thing. Tired means, please help me keep this performance going until tomorrow. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully believe me. Kids can hear hollowness in a sentence faster than adults can. After that, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Not in a paranoid way. In a quiet, masculine sort of denial where you collect evidence for a truth you still hope isn't true. Claire had stopped touching me, unless there was a practical reason. A hand on my shoulder as she squeezed past, a quick side hug if someone was watching, a pat on the arm at church like she was congratulating a coworker. At night, she'd turn away in bed with a sigh that sounded rehearsed. Not mean, just already elsewhere. I told myself it was stress. School had been rough. Her mother's health wasn't great. Nora was entering that strange age where little girls become private overnight, and every emotion arrives with teeth. Life was full. Life was heavy. But there was a difference between a heavy life and an absent wife. And I was starting to feel that difference in my bones. One Friday, Claire forgot her lunch on the counter. That almost never happened. She was careful about things, prepared, the kind of woman who packed tomorrow's coffee mug tonight. I was already halfway to work when she texted asking if I could bring it by the school around noon. I said yes. Around 11:30, I parked in the faculty lot and carried her lunch tote to the front office. The secretary said Claire was covering recess and told me I could leave it in her classroom. I'd only been in there once before, during parent night. Third-grade rooms all smell the same. Dry erase markers, paper, glue, old books, and whatever emotion children leave behind in the walls. Her desk was in the corner near a reading rug and a low shelf of chapter books. I set the lunch down, and that's when I saw the notebook. Black-covered, NO label. Tucked halfway under a stack of graded worksheets. I probably wouldn't have thought much of it, except I recognized it. I had seen Claire carrying it around the house for weeks. Not openly, just here and there, on the arm of the couch, on a nightstand, in her tote bag. I assumed it was school planning, lesson notes, parent conference reminders, the kind of invisible labor teachers bring home with them. But something about the way she kept it close and hidden came back to me all at once. I should have left it there. That's the truth. There are moments in a person's life when they still have the option to remain the earlier version of themselves. This was one of mine. I could have dropped off the lunch and walked out. I could have stayed ignorant, maybe even kept the marriage alive a little longer. But ignorance only feels noble when the truth is still theoretical. Mine was sitting 3 feet away on a desk in a quiet classroom. So I looked at it. Then I picked it up. It wasn't locked. NO elastic band, NO warning. Just a notebook. The ordinary shape of a private disaster. I opened somewhere near the middle. The handwriting was Claire's. Neat, slanted slightly right. The same handwriting from grocery lists and birthday cards and the notes she used to leave in Nora's lunchbox. The first line I saw said, "I miss being able to breathe in my own house." I read it 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I did. Immediately. And I hated that I did. My fingers went cold. I looked at the classroom door, even though no one was there. Then I looked back down. Under that sentence, she had written, "He isn't cruel." That's what makes it so hard to explain. I remember staring at that line longer than the first one. Because if she had called me cruel, I could have rejected it. I could have gotten angry, defensive, righteous. But that sentence left me nowhere to stand. Not cruel, just something else. Something harder to argue with. I kept reading. That was my mistake. Or maybe the mistake happened years earlier, and this was just the first time I saw the bill. There were dates at the top of each entry, though not every day. Scattered thoughts, fragments. Sometimes only a paragraph, sometimes a page. And the more I read, the more I realized this wasn't a diary in the sentimental sense. It was a pressure valve, a place where my wife said the things she couldn't say to me. One entry read, "I spend so much time trying not to upset him that I don't know what I actually feel anymore." Another, "He thinks silence means peace. He has no idea how loud it is for me." Then one that made me physically sit down in the little classroom chair behind her desk. Sometimes I imagine packing a bag just to see if I still can. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the room to start feeling unreal. Little construction paper planets hung from the ceiling that a multiplication chart curled at one corner. Some kid had left a pencil gnawed down like a beaver got to it. And in the middle of that completely ordinary room, my marriage had stopped being the story I thought it was. I flipped another page. This entry was more recent. Only 6 lines. I still remember every one of them. Nora asked if we still love each other. I told her grown-up love can look quiet. What I didn't say was this: quiet isn't always safe. Sometimes quiet is just where people bury things. Sometimes I can feel myself disappearing in it. I had to put the notebook down, because in that moment, sitting in my wife's classroom, surrounded by children's handwriting and sharpened crayons, I realized something that made me feel sick. My daughter had noticed. Of course she had. She had not only noticed, she had asked. And Claire had answered her alone. Whatever was dying in our house, it was no longer just between me and my wife. It had reached our daughter. That thought hollowed me out. I should tell you I stopped there. I didn't. I kept reading until I found the sentence that changed the entire shape of the notebook. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was just honest in a way that scared me. It said, "The worst part is that there's someone I can still talk to without feeling small." I froze. I read that line once. Then again. Then, one more time, like maybe repetition would make it mean less. It didn't. There was more under it, but I heard footsteps in the hallway and snapped the notebook shut. My heart kicked so hard it actually hurt. Someone passed by the classroom. I sat there holding that black notebook in both hands, staring at the door, realizing one awful thing after another. My wife had been suffocating in silence, and my daughter had already sensed the rot. And somewhere in all of this, there was another person. Maybe not an affair, maybe not even close, but someone she could talk to, someone who made her feel like herself. And I knew, right then, before I had proof of anything else, that what I was holding wasn't just a journal. It was the version of my marriage my wife had been living in alone. I put the notebook back exactly where I found it, straightened the worksheets, picked up the lunch bag even though I had already set it down, then set it back again because my hand was shaking. When I walked out of that classroom, I wasn't angry yet. That would have been easier. I was disoriented, like I had spent 14 years building a house, and someone had just shown me all the rooms I never knew were inside it. I made it to the parking lot and sat in my truck for 10 minutes. Didn't start the engine. Didn't call anyone. Just stared through the windshield of the school playground and tried to decide which part hurt most. That she had been unhappy. That Nora knew Dot, or that another name, still faceless, still undefined, was now sitting in the middle of my marriage like a lit match waiting for oxygen. I went back to work that afternoon and did what men do best when they are quietly coming apart. I functioned. I signed forms, answered questions, walked inventory, nodded at jokes I didn't hear. Then I went home. Claire was already there, helping Nora with math at the kitchen table. She looked up and smiled the same small, familiar smile she always gave me when I walked in. And for the first time in 14 years, I looked at my wife and realized I had no idea who she had become when she was alone. I didn't say anything that night. That's the part one keep coming back to. Not the notebook, not the words, not even the line about someone she could talk to. Just the silence. Because after everything I read, I walked into my own house, sat down at the kitchen table, and acted like nothing had changed. And in a way, that was the most honest thing I did. Because nothing had changed. Not on the surface. Claire still helped Nora with math, still corrected her gently when she got frustrated, still brushed a strand of hair behind her ear the same way she always had. Nora still complained about fractions like they were a personal attack, still looked to both of us for small approvals. And I stood there holding my keys a little too long, watching them, trying to figure out where exactly I existed in that picture. Because earlier that day, in a third-grade classroom, I had learned something simple and brutal. I wasn't in the version of our life that lived inside my wife's head. I set my keys down. "How was your day?" Claire asked. Same question, same tone. The kind of sentence that sounds normal until you realize it has nothing behind it. "Busy," I said. She nodded like that answered everything. That's how people drift. Not through conflict, through agreement. Dinner happened. Spaghetti. Nora talking about a girl in her class who cried because someone erased her drawing. Claire listening, responding, being present. I watched her carefully. Not obviously, just enough to confirm something I already knew. She wasn't pretending. That's what made it confusing. She wasn't acting like someone hiding something. She was acting like someone surviving something. And I didn't know which version of that scared me more. At one point, Nora asked if we could all watch a movie together. Claire said, "Maybe this weekend." Not yes, not no. A soft delay. Nora didn't argue. She just nodded and went back to eating. I noticed that too. Kids adjust faster than we think. They stop asking for things that feel uncertain. After dinner, Claire started loading the dishwasher. I dried my hands and walked over to help. We stood side by side in the kitchen. Close enough to touch. Not touching. They used to feel normal. Now it felt like standing next to a stranger at a sink. "I stopped by your school today," I said. She didn't look up right away. "Yeah. You left your lunch." "Oh," she said like she had forgotten. "Thanks." That was it. No follow-up question. No curiosity. She didn't ask if I came into the classroom. Didn't ask if I saw anything. Didn't ask anything. And that told me something. Not guilt. Not necessarily. Just distance. Because when you're emotionally connected to someone, you're curious about their experience. You want to know where they stood, what they saw, how they moved through your world. Claire didn't. To her, my visit was just logistics. Lunch delivered, problem solved. I wanted to say it right then. Wanted to pull the notebook out of the invisible space between us and drop it on the counter. Ask her what it meant. Ask her who she was talking to. Ask her how long she'd been feeling like she couldn't breathe in our house. But something stopped me. Not fear. Something else. Instinct, maybe. Because confrontation is easy when you're angry. It's harder when you're unsure. And I wasn't ready to hear answers I didn't understand yet. So I stayed quiet. That night, we went to bed like always. Claire turned off her lamp before I did. Rolled on her side. Back facing me. That familiar shape. That familiar distance. I lay there staring at the ceiling. Every sentence from the notebook replaying in my head. I miss being able to breathe. He thinks silence means peace. There's someone I can still talk to. That last one wouldn't let go. Because it didn't feel like an accident. It felt specific. Intentional. Someone. Not people. Not friends. Someone. And my mind did what every mind does in that situation. It started filling in blanks. A coworker, a parent from school, someone for her past, or maybe just someone who listened. Sometimes that's all it takes. Not attraction, not even intention, just attention. I turned my head slightly. Claire's breathing was steady, not fake, not forced. She was asleep, or close to it, and I realized something in that moment that made everything heavier. Whatever she had written in that notebook, she had written it without expecting me to ever read it. That was her real voice, the one she didn't edit, didn't soften, didn't protect me from, and I had stepped into it without permission, which meant one thing. I couldn't unknow it. The next morning, everything felt sharper, not different, just more defined, like someone had turned up the contrast on a picture I'd been staring at for years. Claire moved through the kitchen, making coffee. Nora packed her backpack. I stood there, watching small interactions like they were clues in a case I hadn't agreed to investigate. At one point, Nora asked Claire if she could have a friend over that weekend. Claire hesitated, just for a second. Then she said, "We'll see." That hesitation stuck with me, because it wasn't about scheduling. It felt like something else. Like she wasn't sure what the weekend would look like yet. Like plans weren't solid. Like something was pending. After they left, I stood alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. Not peaceful, just empty. I walked over to the counter where Claire usually left her bag. It wasn't there. She had taken it with her. That was new. Normally she'd leave it at home. Something about that small change tightened something in my chest. Again, not proof, just movement. And once you start noticing movement, it's hard to stop. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept replaying the classroom, the notebook, that last line. There's someone I can still talk to. Around noon, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years. I drove past her school. I didn't plan it. I just turned, like my body had made a decision before my brain caught up. I parked across the street, sat there, watched the building, kids running during recess, teachers standing in clusters, parents coming and going, and I realized how easy it would be for someone to exist in her world without me ever knowing. That thought settled in slowly, uncomfortably, because marriage gives you this illusion of total awareness. You think you know the full map of someone's life, but the truth is, there are always rooms you don't have keys to. I sat there for 10 minutes, 15, long enough to feel like I was crossing a line just by being there. Then I saw her, Claire, walking across the small side yard near the fence, talking to someone, a man. They were standing close, not too close, just close enough that it felt familiar. He said something. She smiled, not the polite smile from the kitchen, not the small one she gave me, a real one, open, easy, unfiltered, and that hit me harder than anything in the notebook, because I had seen that smile before, years ago, before everything got quiet, before we became careful with each other. I sat there watching for maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. Then I looked away, not because I didn't want to see more, because I had already seen enough. I didn't follow her, didn't wait, didn't confront her when she got home. I drove back to work, and for the first time since I opened that notebook, something inside me settled into a shape I recognized. Not anger, not yet. Clarity, because now it wasn't just words on paper. It was real. There was someone, not a theory, not a sentence, a person. And whether it was emotional or innocent or something in between, it didn't matter as much as I thought it would, because the real truth had already revealed itself. My wife felt more like herself with someone else than she did with me. And that kind of distance doesn't start in a moment. It builds, quietly, over time, until one day, you're sitting in your car across the street from your own life, watching someone else stand in a place you thought was still yours. I went home that evening knowing one thing for certain. The conversation I had been avoiding was no longer optional, because now it wasn't just about what she wrote, or what I suspected. It was about what I had seen. And once you see something like that, you can't go back to polite. I didn't wait for the right moment. There isn't one. That's something I learned too late. People think difficult conversations need the perfect setting, the right tone, the right timing. But the truth is, once something inside you crosses a certain line, waiting just becomes another form of lying. That evening, Claire came home like she always did. She set her bag on the counter, kissed Nora on the head, asked about homework. Everything looked the same. But I wasn't the same person standing in that kitchen anymore, because now I knew, not everything, but enough. Dinner passed in that familiar, quiet rhythm. Nora talked. Claire responded. I listened. But this time I wasn't studying the silence. I was waiting for it, because silence was the only place left where the truth could exist without interruption. After Nora went upstairs to finish a project, I stood up from the table. Claire, she looked at me. There was something in my voice that made her pause immediately. Not fear, recognition. We need to talk. That sentence always changes the air. She nodded slowly. Okay. We didn't move to the living room. Didn't soften the setting. We stayed in the kitchen, standing across from each other. Same place where we'd had 1,000 small conversations that didn't matter. And one that finally did. I didn't ease into it. Didn't ask general questions. Didn't give her space to redirect. I went into your classroom yesterday. Her face changed slightly. Not shock, just awareness. I saw your notebook. Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't try to fix itself. She looked down at the counter, then back at me. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't pretend. You read it. Not a question. A statement. I nodded. She exhaled slowly. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired in a different way. The real kind. I waited. Because after everything I had read, after everything I'd seen, this wasn't the moment to fill space with my own words. Finally, she spoke. You weren't supposed to see that. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because of how small that sentence sounded compared to everything it carried. I know, I said. Another pause. Then I added, but I did. She nodded, and then something shifted in her posture. Not physically, emotionally, like she had been holding a door shut for a long time, and finally let go. What do you want to know? She asked. That question hit me harder than anything else, because it meant she already knew. She knew there were things to explain, things to admit, things she hadn't been saying. I thought about all the questions I had. The notebook, the distance, the years of silence. And then I asked the only one that actually mattered. Who is he? She didn't flinch, didn't deny it, didn't act confused. She just closed her eyes for a second, then opened them again. His name is Daniel. Hearing a name made it real in a way nothing else had. Not a concept, not a shadow, a person. How long? I asked. She looked at the counter again. Since the beginning of the school year. That was months. Months of conversations. Months of distance I had explained away as stress. Months of my daughter asking quiet questions while I told her everything was fine. What is it? I asked. She didn't answer right away, because this is where people choose what kind of truth they're willing to tell. Finally, she said, we talk. I nodded slowly. About what? Everything. That word again. Everything. The same word that used to exist in our marriage. The same word that had disappeared without me noticing. Are you with him? I asked. She shook her head immediately. No. I believed her. Not because I wanted to, because of how she said it. No hesitation. No performance. Just truth. But that didn't make it easier. Because physical betrayal is clear. You can point to it, define it, react to it. Emotional distance is harder. It doesn't have a single moment. It's a slow replacement. And I was starting to understand that I had already been replaced in ways I couldn't measure. I leaned back slightly. Then why does it feel like you're not here anymore? That question landed. She looked at me, and for a second I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not distance, not politeness, pain. Because I haven't been, she said quietly. That was it. No defense, no explanation, just the truth. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. Why? I asked. She hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she knew exactly how much it would hurt to say it out loud. Finally, she said, because I stopped feeling like myself here. I swallowed. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I shook my head. No, that's what it feels like. Not why it happened. She took a breath. You want to know why? Yes. She nodded slowly. Because somewhere along the way, we stopped being real with each other. I didn't respond. She continued. You stopped talking about anything that mattered. I stopped asking. We both got comfortable being fine. That word again. Fine. The most dangerous word in a marriage. We didn't fight, she said. We didn't break anything. We just disappeared from each other. Her voice cracked slightly, and I didn't even notice how bad it had gotten until someone else talked to me like I still existed. That sentence landed exactly where it was supposed to. Not as an attack, as a realization. And I couldn't argue with it, because I had read the notebook. I had seen the version of her that lived outside our conversations. The version that felt unseen. The version that found space to breathe somewhere else. I looked down at the table. For the first time since this started, I wasn't just thinking about what she had done. I was thinking about what I had missed. All the moments I chose quiet over connection. All the times I said, I'm tired instead of I don't know how to talk anymore. All the years I believed providing was the same as being present. I looked back up at her. So what now? That's the question nobody prepares for. Because once the truth is out, there's no script. She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, looking at me, really looking. Not polite, not distant, present. I don't know, she said. And for once, that answer felt honest. We stood there in silence. But this time, it wasn't the old silence. Not the kind that hides things. The kind that waits. The kind that asks something without saying it. Upstairs, I could hear Nora moving around in her room. Normal life continuing above us. And suddenly I understood something clearly. This wasn't just about us anymore. It never really was. Our silence had already reached her. Our distance had already shaped her understanding of love. And whatever happened next would shape it even more. I took a slow breath. I'm still here, I said. Claire's eyes filled slightly. I know. No, I said. I mean really here. Not just standing in the same room. She didn't look away this time. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Not certainty, not resolution, just possibility. Because sometimes the thing that breaks a marriage isn't betrayal. It's absence. And sometimes, the only way to fix what's broken is to finally admit you were never really there in the first place. If you're watching this and something in your relationship feels off, don't wait for proof. Don't wait for a moment that forces the truth out into the open. Because by the time you see it clearly, it's already been happening for a long time. Silence doesn't protect relationships. It slowly replaces them. And the scariest part? You won't even notice it until someone else starts speaking where you stopped.